Husband's ex-wife decided to accuse us of abusing and neglecting the kids since when she called up my husband and told him that she wanted to swap custody, where she had primary custody and he would just get visitation in the summer times like she had. And he said, no, that's not how this works. The court has deemed me the responsible parent and I have the primary custody, and you get to see our daughter in the summer times and on Christmas break, spring break, and on rotating Thanksgiving holidays. She didn't like that answer. She didn't like that he told her, no, we're not going to change the custody plan just because on a whim you want to change it for whatever reason. So she decided, since she didn't get her way when she asked him, told him that they needed to change the parenting plan, she would take us to court and file a false claim alleging abuse and neglect against us, to which she did this in a very perfect timing manner at the end of her summer visit with my stepdaughter, when she was supposed to be putting my husband's daughter, on a plane back to us. This is part 3 of the series that I've been sharing about my husband's ex-wife and the shit show she caused in our life at the beginning of our relationship. This is well over a decade ago. You can go watch the first 2 parts, but now we're getting into where it gets really messy, where she had us served with papers for this false allegation. Which anytime you have court papers served to you, it's terrifying. Even more so when they're very serious allegations, especially when they're false allegations against us. And the things that she alleged in these court documents that my husband and I did were absolutely freaking wild. One of the claims that she made was that we would buy takeout dinner for just my husband and I, and then we would only allow our kids to eat cereal and would force them to watch us eat these lavish takeout meals in front of them, but only allow them to eat cereal. That never happened, and that's one of the wildest made up claims of abuse and neglect that you could make about a situation. I don't know why that's one of the things that she picked to claim that we did, because 1, that didn't happen, and 2, I know a lot of picky kids out there that might not eat Chinese food and would much rather eat cereal for dinner than having takeout. That's neither here nor there, but that was one of the things that she said in her court documents. Before we jump to how we responded to this court document, I'm going to take a step back and actually jump into how wild and toxic my whole husband's family is. It's not just his mom and his ex-wife. They all have this really unique, wild, crazy thing about them, and it's amazing my husband does as well as he does in spite of these people that have really made it hard for him to develop his own being in many ways. And I don't have a whole lot of stories that are like this that are crazy from when we decided to move and create our own life away from his entire family and have our own businesses. For the last 7 years, our life has been like super chill and laid back. But this is the beginning of the relationship, and when all of this craziness was going on, he was working for his great aunt and uncle, who are multimillionaires at this time. If you follow my story, you'll know some of this context and some of the things that have happened and occurred. But when we got served that paperwork, we realized we needed an attorney back in Wisconsin, because those were serious accusations that were being made. And his previous attorney that he used for his divorce wasn't a good attorney at all. Very schmuck of a schmuck, typical bottom feeder kind of attorney. So I did some quick research on attorneys in that area in Wisconsin and landed upon a woman that I thought sounded phenomenal just from reading her bio and who she was as an attorney and as a woman in that area. And I knew that's exactly who we needed to retain to fight these false allegations. But unfortunately, we didn't have the large retainer fee that we needed to have in order to retain her for the type of case that we needed her for. Mike went to his great aunts and he went to his dad and asked if he could get a loan from them. Both of them told him no, that this was his problem and his fight and that he needed to take care of it, and they weren't willing to help in any way, shape, or form. And I talk about this now because so many of you like to freak out on the fact that I was 18 and he was 34 when we met and started dating, and that how could my family be okay with that, and how could his family be okay with it, and how could just anyone allow that to happen without really knowing the context of who we are as humans on a first name real basis. His family, even though they knew what Mike's ex-wife was like and is like, had zero interest in helping in these false allegations. We had part of the retainer, we didn't have all of it. And I reached out to my brother and I explained the situation. He read the documents. He knew my husband, he knew my stepdaughter, he knew who we were as people, and he happily helped out and gave Mike the portion of money that we needed to fight this and retain an attorney that would help us out. Mike did put up collateral. Mustang, actually one of the Mustangs he owns now, the first Mustang he owned when we met that I'll never let him get rid of, is actually what he used for collateral with my brother to loan the money to help us with the remainder of the retainer that we needed in order to go back to Wisconsin and fight these false allegations that had come about because my husband's ex-wife decided that she no longer wanted to just have visitation but wanted to have primary custody of their daughter, to which the court had never ever granted her or given her any option of having that kind of custody of their daughter. But she thought if she made this false allegation that she might just get away with getting more custody of their daughter and limiting him access to her. Come back for part number 4 of this series of his ex-wife and how we met and what happened with our attorney back in Wisconsin and what we told his ex-wife when he talked to her on the phone for the first time after we got served that paperwork that she made these false allegations about us on. My husband's ex-wife falsely accused my husband and I of abusing and neglecting the kids. This was back in 2010. She only ever had visitation with the kids. My husband was always the primary custodial parent in that relationship. They divorced years before I ever knew my husband, and this is part 4 of the whole chaos of my husband's ex-wife in my life. Again, this was well over a decade ago. I'm just sharing this story as part of my life and things that have occurred. Just a quick recap, my stepdaughter lived with us primarily and would visit her mom on summer break, Christmas break, spring break typically. So at the end of summer break in 2010, she did not get the request she wanted of my husband to have the primary custody during the school year, so she decided to file these false allegations against us and take us to court. After we identified what attorney we wanted to represent us, we reached out to that attorney. My brother loaned us some money to help with our retainer fee of that attorney. We had collected all this information over the summer that we knew we were going to possibly need because of some red flags that we were starting to notice while my stepdaughter was gone visiting her mom. I'm going to go over these last two specific instances of this experience tonight, and then I'm going to take a break, and I will get back at telling more of this first court battle that we had with her tomorrow. So after we had figured out what attorney we wanted to hire and knew that she would at least meet with us, my husband did reach out to his ex-wife, and I can't recall exactly if she called him or he called her, but we wanted the element of surprise. And so my husband just kind of told her, like, I don't know if I can make it to court because of how tactful she is and how she thinks that she can manipulate the courts. She got an emergency injunction. So we had to show up in court within 5 days of getting this notification. And of those 5 days, 2 of those days were a weekend. So we had to scurry like mad to get all of our ducks in a row, leave work, drive across the country, meet with an attorney, and get this all done. So my husband, in this phone conversation with her, played it off as though we couldn't take the time off work. We didn't know how we were going to be there. We were just going to kind of leave it up to the judge to decide. We played as though we weren't just going to be able to show up. We wanted the element of surprise with her. We didn't want her knowing that we had every intentions of showing up and fighting for my husband's daughter, my stepdaughter, and the best possible outcome for her. So she had no idea that we were working our butts off in the background getting all this done. And we met with the attorney in Wisconsin. We drove within 2 days from Washington to Wisconsin and sat down on a Monday morning with the attorney and showed her all the paperwork we had, and she was blown away. And she knew the kind of woman that she was going to be going up against. And I'm going to recap one of the pieces of documentation that we had to show that the environment that my stepdaughter was in with her mom was not a healthy environment for a child to be present in. My husband's ex-wife had posted on MySpace about how painful and in detail about her nipple piercings, a public platform that her children had access to and could comment on. And unfortunately, she made this post during the summer when my stepdaughter was back with her mom during this time that she had this done, and she was sharing with the world her experience. And oddly enough, instead of like them having a conversation in person about it, my stepdaughter responded to her mom on the MySpace comment and said how gross and disturbing that post was. To which this woman replied to her daughter and told her that pain was beautiful. Just like when she gave birth to her. It was painful, yet it was beautiful. She literally had the audacity to compare sharing her experience of nipple piercings to anything to correlate with having a child. Again, this was just a small snippet of all the information that we had to provide to our attorney, and we had 5 days from being served Thursday evening to me needing to be in court on Tuesday with her. We managed to meet with the attorney on Monday, show up in court on Tuesday, and I will tell you way more about this tomorrow. So come back, click the follow button, follow along, and I'm going to share with you this journey that occurred 13 years ago and really has made Mike and my relationship 10 times stronger because we have been through hell and back together. Husband's ex-wife falsely accused us of abusing and neglecting the kids, and this is part 5 of this first lawsuit that she started against us with these false allegations. She sure as heck didn't think that we were going to show up in court, and she had no idea that we were going to have an attorney with us because we were given 5 days notice, and the court case was in Wisconsin, and we live in Washington State, and that's because the jurisdiction of the custody happened to be in Wisconsin at that time. And if you're new, my husband always had primary custody of his daughter after his wife walked out on him. Go watch part 1 through 4 and click the follow button so that you can stay along. I have a playlist made of ex-wife so that you can watch this in order. The courtroom where the court case was being heard was on the 2nd floor, and we got there early with our attorney because we wanted, again, the element of surprise. We didn't know which side of the hallway that she was going to be coming up on. We weren't sure if my stepdaughter was even going to be with her because, again, the ex-wife had no idea that we were showing up. My husband, our attorney, and I were sitting there when we watched them walk up the far staircase away from us, and it happened to be my ex-wife, her dad, her sister, and her boyfriend at the time, along with my stepdaughter. And when my stepdaughter realized that her dad and I were at the other end of the hallway, she bolted to run towards us. And that's when my husband's ex-wife reached out and grabbed her by her ponytail and yanked her back, not allowing their daughter to run to her father to say hi to him, whom she hadn't seen for almost 90 days because she left in June to go spend the summer with her mom, and this was in August. My blood still boils when I recall this memory to this day, even though it was 14 years ago. It absolutely makes my blood boil when I recall that scene, and I will never forget that moment because just that instant reaction to watching another parent react that way when a child got excited to see their dad is devastating. And our attorney watched the whole thing happen. The ex-wife naturally made it so that it was extremely slow for them to walk the hallway down towards us and would not allow their daughter to run to her dad at all. When they finally got to us, and it felt like forever, and I'm sure it wasn't that long, but looking back, it felt like forever to them to get to us. She said to my husband, "I thought that you weren't going to show up." And Mike said, "I'm here and I'll always be here to fight for my daughter." This was a very awkward introduction. I had yet to meet my husband's ex-wife or his ex-sister-in-law or his ex-father-in-law, and we all had to sit on the bench outside the courtroom and wait for the courtroom to be open and for the hearing to start. Come back for what happened when the courtroom doors opened and then what happened when I went to the restroom and the ex-sister-in-law followed me into the bathroom.